In 2017, the Welsh Government launched a Code of Practice for Ethical Employment in Supply Chains. The code has been developed to ensure that the millions of workers in public sector supply chains are employed legally and fairly. Wales and West Housing Group have signed up to the code, which outlines 4 main topics and 12 commitments. The 4 topics of the code. The 4 topics range from the illegal to the unlawful, the unfair to good practice, and include things like modern slavery, blacklisting, false self-employment, unfair use of zero-hour contracts, paying the Living Wage Foundation's living wage. So let's find out a bit more about the impact of each of these practices. Modern slavery. A quick quiz for you. Globally, how many people are estimated to be victims of modern slavery? Well, according to the 2016 Global Slavery Index, produced by the Walk Free Foundation, modern slavery affects 45.8 million people worldwide. Slavery doesn't take place in the UK. True or false? That's false. In 2016, there were more than 3,800 referrals of potential victims to the National Referral Mechanism, including over 120 in Wales. So as you can see, slavery is not a term associated with the past. It still happens today. People can be forced to work against their will, bought or sold, have their documents stolen to prevent their escape, or be forced to work for very low wages to pay off debts. For more information about modern slavery, please visit the e-learning course accessed from the link above this video. Blacklisting. Blacklisting is the act of denying employment to people, either because they're members of a trade union or workers who have made health and safety complaints in the past. This topic also includes the broader issue of ensuring that workers are free to join trade unions without fearing discrimination. False self-employment. False self-employment is when workers' contracts do not reflect the reality of their relationships with the employer, often disguising employment of an individual as self-employment. For example, a company going through financial difficulties might force some employees to register as self-employed, but continue to provide the same work in the same location at the same hours. But because that person is no longer a contracted employee, they will miss out on entitlements to pensions, redundancy pay, maternity and paternity leave and pay, sick pay and annual leave. That person's health and safety may also be compromised, as the company is no longer fully accountable for providing PPE or other safety equipment. Zero-hour contracts. One of the more recognisable practices included within the code is the unfair use of zero-hour contracts. As you might have seen, it's got a lot of media attention over the last few years. A 0 hours contract occurs when an employer is not obliged to provide any minimum working hours to an employee, and the employee is not obliged to accept any work offered. They're not necessarily unfair and can be beneficial to both parties where a flexible working pattern is preferred and where there is an equal balance of power. However, they should not be used to avoid employer obligations such as holiday, sick pay and pensions, or be used to penalise workers who decline work and favour those who readily accept work. The living wage. The 4th main topic covered by the code focuses on what good can look like. The recommendation is that employees should be paid the Living Wage Foundation's living wage. This isn't to be confused with the statutory national living wage. Outlined by the government, the national living wage is the minimum wage that can be paid to any workers in the UK. What we're talking about is the Living Wage Foundation's living wage. It's calculated differently, and it's calculated by taking into account the actual cost of living for someone that lives in the UK. How much in today's economy would it cost to buy the essentials needed, as well as accounting for a degree of social inclusion? As such, the Living Wage Foundation's living wage is higher than the statutory minimum. It exists to help reduce levels of poverty. Poverty causes a wide range of social problems, reducing quality of life and expectations for the future. The 12 commitments of the Code. Each organisation signed up to the Code commit to 12 separate actions to aid ethical employment in supply chains, including deploying policies, training staff, considering employment practices during recruitment, reviewing high areas of expenditure, and considering paying the Living Wage Foundation's living wage. You can read the 12 commitments in full, as well as the Wales and West Housing Group action to these commitments in the appendix of the Ethical Employment Policy, available at the top of this page. Signing up does not mean you have reached the destination, it means that you are taking all of the commitments seriously and progressing them over time. And here at Wales and West Housing, that's exactly why we have signed up to the Code, to make sure that we can play our part when it comes to the ethical employment of people within supply chains. Please scroll down to the bottom of this page and complete the end of module quiz.